lesson, and now we are beginning on a new topic, which is production. Remember the topics you saw in the background to economics. You had the background to economics, then the introduction was topic number 1, then price theory, topic number 2. Now we are on our third topic, which is production out of the 17. And in production, we are going to look at the definition of production per se. Then we shall also try to find out the various types of forms of production. Commonly, we look at them in two perspectives. Either you are handling direct production, also known as substance production, or indirect production, which is also known as commercial production. Then the direct and the indirect production, we shall examine the features or characteristics of each, try to see how advantageous or how disadvantageous each one of them is. Then when we come to commercial production, which is the order of the day, because most people have moved away, the majority have moved away from direct production and they have embarked on indirect or commercial production. What are the common limitations to this kind of commercial production, more especially in our third world or the developing countries? Then from there, we shall handle the factors or agents of production, which are commonly 4. These are land, labor, capital, and the entrepreneurship. And again, we shall try to expound on each one of them in detail and see how they contribute to the production process and economics in general. Production is vital, because if production is not there, then we shall not be having goods and services. We have seen demand and supply. In order to satisfy the demand, there has to be a supplier. And the supplier is the producer who engages in the production of goods and services. And we find that production again on its own is not important unless if there are people to use those goods and services to satisfy their needs. So again, production is incomplete until the goods and services reach the final consumers who need them to satisfy their needs. So production and price theory are interrelated, because in price theory, we look at the allocation of resources where producers and consumers have a high degree of freedom, like in the price mechanism. And again, we shall see how those resources try to limit production when we look at them in the form of factors or agents of production. How do they influence the production process? And again, we shall see, is production under one person, which is monopoly? Is it under 2 people? Is it by many people? And that kind of thing. And we shall look at them under the topic of what is known as the market structures. Look at those producers and how they engage in the production process to avail goods and services to their users. So the definition of economics, we can define it in a simple way. Definition. A simple definition. The creation of utility to satisfy human wants. Or production is the activity aimed at bringing about a physical change in a good to make it useful in order to satisfy human wants. activity of changing, and we have to mark those words. Changing, creation, wherever there is creation, then we need utility, and that utility is the aiming at satisfying human wants. Activity of changing the physical good or activity of changing the physical appearance of an item to make it useful and enable it to satisfy human needs. But all these are acceptable, but the more convincing one and more economic, the one which has the more economic leverage, is that one where we have production, is the creation of utility to satisfy human wants. Any of those can be accepted, but the first one has more meaning. And again, we find that production is not complete. Production is not complete until the goods or services reach the final consumer or final user. An investor may mobilize resources, capital, labor, raw materials, and be able to come out with a given level of output, and that output is meaningless and useless if it simply remains in the factory, if it just remains in the industry. It will only be part of production when the finished goods reach the final consumer who uses them in order to satisfy his wants. He will use them to get utility out of them. He gets some kind of satisfaction from buying them. Otherwise, when they are still in the factory, they are stored there, he's not enjoying them. They need to be enjoyed. And it's the consumer who enjoys those goods and services. So whenever you produce, you are not producing just for yourself, as commercial production dictates. You are producing for others. And these other people, as I've already seen the price mechanism, they make you to continue stay in a given line of production whenever they buy your commodity. It is an indicator that they want your good, and you have to allocate more resources towards its production as they are ready to use it. So production is not complete until the goods or services reach the final user or the final consumer. And in production, as already outlined, it is carried out in two ways. Either you are a direct producer or an indirect producer. So forms of production are two. These are two. One is direct production, also known as subsistence Indirect production, also known as commercial production. Direct production involves producers engaging in the creation or bringing forth of goods and services to satisfy their direct needs. Whatever they are producing, whatever they engage in creating, is for their ultimate use, not for others. And we shall look at the features under this kind of direct production, that the producer produces for own satisfaction, for own use, not for others. And when we look at the features, we shall see that mainly family labor is used. The quantity of output produced under direct production is usually very small. Why? Because you need it only for your family purposes. You are not selling. You don't need a surplus to go to the market. And if at all there is to be exchange of whatever you are producing as a direct producer, mainly this exchange is carried out using a barter system, where you exchange goods for goods, a basket of tomatoes for a chicken, a liter of milk, maybe for a bunch of bananas, like that. So goods for goods. So you render a service, and thereafter you'll be given an equivalent amount of goods. And we find that in most cases, the acreage, if it is agriculture, which is under production, is very small. So levels of output are likely to be small, because the requirements for this direct production are also not expansive, they are not large. And usually the technology used is traditional, backward, and maybe inefficient. Simple tools are actually used in the direct production, and that is why we have low levels of output and a high degree of inefficiency, and maybe the use of mainly family labor, because we are using tools like the hoe, if it is agriculture, if it is an industry. These are cottage industries, again, which require simple machines and mainly labor intensive. Yet with indirect production, you are producing not for your own purpose or for your own use, but you are producing for the market. It is also known as commercial production or market production. And it does not carry the characteristics of the direct production, where you produce for own purposes. Here, the level of output has to be big, because the market has so many consumers and they need to be satisfied. It may not be only you supplying that market, but at least your contribution has also to be significantly big, so that there is no scarcity of that commodity on the market. And if you are to produce, therefore, on large scale, you need modern machines. So usually modern technology is employed because it is efficient and it saves time, and it can produce a lot of output within a short period of time, so that the market demand can be satisfied within that time span. And in most cases, they don't use the unskilled labor, which is family labor, like in direct production. Usually they go in for the skilled laborers. They have the skills of production and are going to be highly efficient and highly productive, and also organized. They understand what they are doing, and they are going to be helpful to the employer to give in a high level or high degree of output. And for that matter, under the indirect production, you don't use family labor alone. There is need for employment of many workers. If it's not workers, then it has to be many machines in order to carry out that kind of commercial production. If you look at agriculture, you have a commercial farmer. He has an expansive acreage of land under cultivation or under the rearing of animals, because the milk which comes out of those animals is not for his own consumption, but it has to go to a certain dairy and people are able to buy the milk in plenty from there. If it is a banana plantation, it may be on acres and acres, so many acres of land, and the bananas on such a large acreage of land are not for family consumption, but they are for the market, and you find that they can be moved from one place to another, as I've already observed that arbitrage can be carried out. If you're a commercial producer and you have a big supply of bananas, you can take them to the urban areas where farming is not on a large scale. These days we have what we call town farming or town agriculture or urban agriculture, where we see the small enclaves of agriculture being practiced and people surviving, having tomatoes grown on sacks and let's say bottles or even tins, but that is again not on a commercial basis. It has to be supplemented by a large level of output coming from the rural areas and coming from commercial producers. So if it is an industry, again, it is on a large acreage of land and the factory is employing many machines, many people, buying a lot of inputs or raw materials so that it can be able to give a large output to satisfy the demand on the market, not in the home of the owner. No, that is the difference between indirect production. You produce what you can in plenty and then you exchange. So in this kind of production, there is exchange of goods and services, not using the barter system as identified in direct production, but there is use of a medium of exchange, which is money. Because you're a commercial producer, you produce on a large scale what you can, as again we are going to see that you can specialize in the production of a particular commodity where you have a comparative advantage compared to others. You can produce it at a low cost and be able to come out with a large level of output, and thereafter exchange in the market. You get money, and thereafter what do you use the money for? You are able to buy what you cannot produce. You cannot be a jack of all tools. You cannot have all the trades with you. You cannot do this and that. We need to specialize. If you are a jack of all trades, then you are not a specialist. You are not having any speciality. And we shall see the advantages of specialization, where you have a large output, you have a better quality, and usually you have a large income that is coming to you out of the large output which you sell. So with indirect production, always the market has a medium of exchange, that is money that you get, and use that money to buy what you cannot produce for yourself. Yet here in direct production, you produce your own food. Maybe you make your own furniture, and maybe you sew your own clothes. Everything you need, you produce it by yourself, and you're able to satisfy your needs directly by yourself. Yet here you specialize in a given trade and then exchange with others. Then you get that money from exchanging what you produce, and you buy what you cannot produce by yourself. So in this kind of production, we need to see the features or the characteristics and what benefits are there, and maybe what are the demerits of each kind of production. So let's look at the features of each of these two types of production. You can call them features or characteristics. Direct production. Output is on a small scale. Small scale. Producer produces for own use or consumption. family labor. It's the wife and children that help in that kind of production. And usually this labor is unskilled. Mainly uses backward tools, backward techniques of production. Also known as rudimentary. And if they are rudimentary, it follows that they are going to be inefficient. And we find that if the means of production are going to be inefficient, exchange, if at all it happens to be there, exchange of goods or commodities is mainly by barter system. No money as a medium of exchange. So they don't use money. In most cases, the output is generally on small scale, or we can say it is mainly very low, and there is limited specialization. There is limited specialization simply because you're a subsistence producer. You produce a little bit of each and everything, as you are not specializing. You produce your own food, you provide your own furniture, you build your own house. You don't specialize in any particular activity, but you are carrying on all the types of trades so that you are able to satisfy your direct needs. Production is for yourself, production is for the individual, and we find that there are limited innovations and inventions. There are limited innovations. Innovations mainly are geared at improving on the level of technology, and inventions are also aimed at introducing better tools. But we find that under the direct production, these inventions and innovations are limited, since you are in most cases contented or happy with the levels of production which you have. As long as you are able to satisfy the needs of your family, that is enough. So those are the major features: limited specialization, and if you look at the quality, it leaves a lot to be desired. Usually, or mainly, poor quality products, because you are not using machines, you are not specializing, you are not having skilled labor, and that accounts for the poor quality products. Poor quality products are produced. So those are the features or characteristics of direct production, where output is on a small scale, it is commonly low. The producer mainly produces for own use or own consumption. He doesn't have a surplus for sale. If it is there, then it's going to be exchanged using the barter system. Mainly employs family labor or unskilled labor. Mainly uses backward techniques of production, which are if you're a farmer, the hoe, the panga, and the slasher are the major tools or implements that accompany the labor in the production process. There is limited specialization because you need to produce a little bit of everything for yourself, and there are limited innovations and inventions. Since you are not interested in high levels of output, no need to improve on your rudimentary tools or even introduce something better. And usually, because of all the above combined together, you end up with poor quality products. And since they are not for the market, nobody is going to question them. They are for your family. Either they consume them or they do without them. And it's not a problem. Nobody will question the quality of your products. What advantages are there as far as direct production is concerned? Is it advantageous in any given way? Advantages or merits of direct production. What advantages are there if you produce for your own production? We find that there is limited wastage of resources. There is limited wastage of resources. Why? You produce just enough for your family, and you find that much land will remain there unused. The forests are going to be there because whatever you cultivate as a farmer, you only need a little supply, but not a commercial farmer who needs to clear a big forest so that you are able to plant a large acreage of the crop to go to the market. So limited wastage of resources, since whatever is produced is for the farmer. It is cheap. It is cheap. This system is cheap. It is a cheap means of production. Cheap means of production, since there is no hiring of labor. You use your own family, and for that matter, you don't pay them. You don't pay your wife or children who assist you in that activity. It is part and parcel of their work. Then it is easy to manage. It is easy to manage. It is easy to manage. Why is it easy to manage? Because it is on small scale. It is on small scale. You can be able to supervise and monitor the activities as they are not expansive compared to the indirect production. Another advantage is that it is a major source of food. It is a major source of food to many people. If you look at the developing countries in particular, or the third world, you find that the majority are subsistence producers producing their own food. Very few buy food from the market, and if you are in the rural areas, you grow your own food, you grow your own sauce like beans and groundnuts and vegetables, tomatoes and so on a small scale as you satisfy your household needs or individual family needs. Another advantage is that there are no transport costs. There are no transport costs. Why? Producer is the consumer. So you don't need to take them to the market. As you produce, you simply move them from your garden or wherever they are, and then you utilize them without paying anybody, without paying anyone to transport them to the market or to transport the raw materials. Everything is found where you are operating from. Then it is highly flexible. It is highly flexible. meaning that can easily change, from one activity to another, from one activity to another. Unlike in specialization, where you have devoted a large stretch of land towards the production of one commodity, changing may not be very easy. But this season, if you see that the beans are not profitable or they are not coming out nicely, you can switch your land to growing of another crop or doing any other kind of small business on that land. So there is a high degree of movement or switching from one activity to another, unlike in the other production.